This is a Hot Pie Original.
Mayor, thanks for doing this. Can you hear me okay?
I can't hear you. Good morning.
Yeah, okay. So most of us wake up today to all the negative news. Only 2 ICU beds left. Is there anything you can add or want to add to where we are locally in terms of the latest surge?
Well, I guess a couple of observations. The most significant one is pretty much everybody that's in the hospitals are people that are not vaccinated. Just again reinforces the message that this vaccination is just incredibly effective. Now that billions of people have taken it, it's also demonstrated to be very safe. The second thing is that the studies are showing that in the short term, in order to be able to bend that curve, the best thing we can do is limit physical interactions. And if you're trying to keep an economy open and vibrant here, that means masking. And everybody should be masking both indoors and out. And then the third point would be, if you actually want to not have to go through this drill, then we need more people to get vaccinated.
So what is, do you know, what is the face of the COVID surge? I mean, you said they're unvaccinated. Are these local people that are unvaccinated? Are these younger people that are unvaccinated? I mean, can you give us an idea what this looks like now?
These are mostly local people in our hospitals and ICUs. It is tending to be younger than the cohort the group was a year ago. And that's really because we did a really good job of getting older people vaccinated, so that the pool of unvaccinated tends to be younger. It includes, unfortunately, a disproportionately large number of pregnant women who are uncertain as to whether or not they should get vaccinated, even though all of the medical advice that I'm seeing, and there was a town hall meeting with local physicians recommending to women in that position or of that age that the risks associated with not being vaccinated are much greater than those of
to be clear, is that a higher proportion of pregnant women taking up ICU beds? Clarify what you just said.
You know, I'm not sure what the numbers are right now. At one point, there were 6 women, as I recall, pregnant who were in critical care situations in our hospitals.
Okay, let's fast forward to the schools, and the now AISD is going to, as of last night, going to have a masking requirement, which of course is in complete disagreement with the governor's mandate. Where were you in all of this? I guess the average person would say, you know, why this, why now, why you know, up against school starting, why was this just decided? And your reaction to it and how involved you were in it and how this plays out going forward.
Well, this is obviously an independent decision. It's made by the independent school board for Austin ISD and their superintendent. But it's something that I support. It's something I know the county judge supports as well. I think as we were getting closer and closer to school, I was hearing from more and more parents that wanted their children to be in school learning, felt it was unsafe to do that without everybody masking, which stands to reason for me when the CDC is saying that's what should happen, when the American Academy of Pediatrics is saying that is what should happen. If we're following the doctors and the data, then that's what should happen.
Before we get into the disagreement with the governor's office and how that plays out, I read this morning, and I think most people think this. And if you're going to defy the governor's order, why wouldn't you go this far? This is in today's last night, I read this in the USA Today. It's Dr. Mark Siegel. This is not some hack. He's a professor of medicine at NYU. And he says the need for clear, uncompromised scientific messages in COVID-19 has never been more important than right now. Unfortunately, too much of the public health response has been about masks and not enough about vaccines. Less than a third of youth ages 12 to 17 haven't been vaccinated. He goes on to make the argument, Why are school districts and cities so obsessed with masks when we should be turning this around and making it more about vaccines? I'm not saying the message is not sent, but if you're going to defy the governor's orders and you're going to run the risk, we have to talk about this, of whatever these fines might be, why not just say, if you want to come to school here, you need to be vaccinated. If you want to teach here, be vaccinated. Why not go there?
I would support that. I think that restaurants should be admitting people unless they're vaccinated. I'd like to see stores and businesses doing that. I'd like to see businesses requiring their employees to get vaccinated. I support those actions. I think that the school was trying to take the least confrontive and the least intrusive step they could take in terms of what they were mandating. But I think that what you're talking about is exactly what society should be doing at this point. If you make the choice not to get vaccinated, and that's a choice you get to make, you also then, I think, have the obligation not to be around other people because you're choosing to put them at risk and greater danger. There is not just an emphasis on masking. Generally, we have to do both things at the same time. But vaccinations, if we can get everybody starting to get vaccinated right now, we're not going to really see the impact of that for 6 weeks because you take the shot. Most instances, you have to wait. You have to take a second shot, although there's protection along the way. We need help right now. So we need to do both the masking and getting people to get vaccinated. Was that discussion on the table? It sounds like you suggest it should have been on the table, but you do know that's in direct disagreement with the governor's executive orders. I think trying to do everything we can to keep the community safe, keep as many people as we can out of the ICUs. And this is not just COVID patients, right? I mean, we have people in emergency vehicles that are having not COVID and are having trouble finding a place in hospitals to drop people off out of EMS vehicles. The COVID patients, the unvaccinated, are taking up space right now that really is needed. And yes, in our conversations, all of these things are being discussed.
So if you had it your way, because you did have it your way up until the governor made the executive order, maybe even now, I guess 2 executive orders, that you and the city council could make these decisions. So if you had it your way, you would be mandating, if the governor had not issued the executive order, would you make vaccines a requirement?
I would certainly limit access to places for people that are choosing not to get vaccinated.
What does that mean? I don't know.
Well, I think I appreciate the restaurants now that are saying you can't come into this restaurant unless you're vaccinated. There was an ACL live concert where you couldn't attend unless you were vaccinated. And I think that's the kind of place we're moving to. If you're choosing not to get vaccinated, then it's important that you try to stay away from people in group settings and the like, because you're putting the community at risk when you do that.
But that's not the governor's executive order. And from the very beginning, I think you've said, and many other states have said the same thing, that the public health issue is the governor's call. But that's not at all. I mean, he's clearly counter to that, legally counter to that, to the point of saying $1,000 fines, which, of course, who knows what that means and when. So your answer back to the governor's position, the governor's executive order, and the threat of fines.
The position of the city of Austin has always been that there is local control and the ability to make these kinds of health decisions on a local basis, and that the governor's executive powers does not extend as broadly as the governor is suggesting. And in fact, we've been in court twice on this issue. We went to district court both occasions. The Court of Appeals upheld the work. The Supreme Court did not rule on the merits, but took away the city action pending the determination. So it's still an open question, I think, with the Supreme Court. And in a situation where it's an open question, I think that cities and communities and counties and health authorities need to assert their rights. I think there is a local freedom and liberty interest for communities being able to make these decisions, and I believe that the law supports that. At the same time, you don't want to end up in court and litigating with the governor if you could avoid it. For too many people, that will just signal that this is a partisan or political endeavor or effort, and that feeds into a lot of the polarization that's driving, I think, at this point, some of the people that are choosing not to get vaccinated. So it's something you want to avoid if you can. But at the end of the day, Jeff, you have to do what's necessary in order to keep people safe.
Right. But isn't the governor's office position? In fact, there was a statement released by the governor's office today in response to these big city school districts, Dallas, I think first, or San Antonio, Austin now, and maybe others will follow, saying we strongly disagree. Are you saying that, from what most of us have understood all along, that the executive order had teeth and it was the law? Are you saying now that it doesn't really have teeth and it's not exactly the law, or you're saying it just might not be the law, or are you just saying I'd prefer it not be the law?
Well, if you recall back on and when we were riding up to New Year's Eve, and the governor was allowing unconstrained groups to gather for New Year's Eve, we entered an order to limit that activity so that we could not have groups gathering at that size in situations where masks wouldn't be on. And we issued that order, and the governor sued to disallow that order. We ended up in court. I mean, we've consistently taken the position that the city and the county and the health authority have the ability to do these local orders. It is an undecided question in law. There is no real clear Supreme Court.
Well, then why not do it then? I mean, if someone hears this and watches this and says, I hear you, Mayor. I think you're making the right call. I think everything you're saying is exactly right. You say you're following the science and you can legally do this. So why not just do all the things you just said and suggested and say you're going to mandate vaccines?
Well, I think there's a lot of really good reasons to go ahead and issue orders in support of what it is that the school district just did in order to provide additional legal bases to support them.
Right. What I'm asking is why wouldn't you just go ahead and do it? I mean, it sounds like we're in this gray space where you just want to talk about masks. I mean, if you're convinced that the right thing to do is for city employees and local businesses and ACL Fest and AISD to all have a vax mandate, what's to stop you then now from going, let's get together and let's pass our own local ordinance or executive order, whatever the term would be?
Right. And I think the question is, and the question that we keep debating is, what's the most effective way to get people to choose to get vaccinated? What's the best way to get people to wear masks? I mean, you can issue an order from the very beginning of this, we've said, and believe that you can't enforce your way to compliance on these things. So this has to be something that a community is choosing to do ultimately. There aren't enough police officers and code enforcement agents to make these things happen. So you're weighing the impact of issuing an order versus you take into consideration, is that going to make it harder? Is that going to make some people dig in? Is that going to really draw lines that somebody who might have been inclined to mask or get vaccinated is not going to do it because it's now a demonstration of their allegiance to some theory or the like. So the conversations we're having with the public health officials really center around what's the best way to get people to comply. And we've been trying to bring as much information and data to the community as we can. That's why we've had the town hall meetings. That's why we've had the doctors speaking directly. That's why we've been getting information out much more visibly in the community over the last couple of weeks. So you can see some behavior change. But that does not mean that we ultimately will not issue orders, the county judge and me and the health authority. That very well might be the next step.
What metric would be used to make that the next step?
Well, I mean, to a large degree, I'm being guided by the public health officials. The public health officials, this is very much in their bailiwick. They're looking at the numbers. They're looking at who it is that's getting vaccinated, not vaccinated. They're looking at the contact tracing as to where these things are happening. And we're going to follow the science and the doctors and we'll execute.
So There's of course a few things. Why is it you think that we're in the position that we're in? Why is there the resistance? Although I think Austin is probably one of the vax rates, I assume we're near the top. I assume we're close to 70%. You can correct me. So why the resistance? What do you think it is? What are you hearing from public health people, the reason against?
You hear various reasons why people are not choosing to get vaccinated, and certainly most people are. We're over 75% of people over 12 in our community eligible for vaccination that have taken at least one shot. We're well into the 60s for people that are fully vaccinated. So yes, our numbers are high, but well into the 60s means that there's 35% of the people who are not part of that group. There are some people, I think, that are deciding not to do it because of the politics that are involved. It's a political alignment issue and loyalty issue. There are some people that are not getting vaccinated because they don't trust the government, or they are not going to do it for that reason. There are some people that are uncertain as to the science or the data, and they have concerns. I mean, there are lots of different people. It used to be, I think, that a lot of people hadn't taken the vaccine because it wasn't available to them. It was hard to get. That's clearly not the case now. I mean, we're virtually going door to door to make it easy as we can for people to get vaccines.
So it sounds like is a behind the scenes argument going on, because you said you may get to the step of mandating vaccines. That's going to set the governor's office off.
And I'm not sure that the next step or the possible step is to actually mandate vaccines. So I didn't say that. What I said was, I think much more likely is start being really clear about places where people that are not unvaccinated should not be. And that's in large groups with other people, where their choice not to get vaccinated is putting the larger community at risk. I'm not.
So if you're not vaccinated, you wouldn't be allowed. Hey, every guy can relate to this. You're tired of wearing those baggy cotton shirts that feel like you're wearing curtains. There's a difference. In fact, I'm wearing the difference. That is the ultra premium basics from goodlifeclothing.com. You'll love the shirts. I've been searching for a long time, like every guy, for the perfect lightweight shirt that looks good if you're in pretty good shape. It's at goodlifeclothing.com. Check them out. You'll see the difference for yourself. You'll feel the difference for yourself. It's the perfect shirt for this time of year in Austin, Texas. So, two things. Go to goodlifeclothing.com. You get a 20% discount if you enter the promo code JeffWard20. That's goodlifeclothing.com. Enter the promo code JeffWard20, or stop by their store domain Northside. You'll love the difference. You'll feel the difference. It's the perfect fit for a guy that's in good shape. It's goodlifeclothing.com, promo code JeffWard20, or stop by their brand new store at Domain Northside.
Correct.
Okay. Sort of saying the same thing, but okay. If you're not...
So he has the choice of being, getting vaccinated.
Okay.
That's,
all right. So...
You're not making anybody put anything into their...
Yeah. So is your fear that if you get to that space, that it's going to create more resistance because of the politics, that if Steve Adler and the Austin City Council say it and they say stay away and it sounds like a mandate, are you owning that there may be greater pushback if you go there?
Yes, that's what we talked about just a second ago. Yeah. I think that's one of the dynamics that exist. I mean, you really want this to be treated like the measles and mumps vaccine. You want to go into kindergarten, your child's going to get a vaccination in order to be able to do that. I mean, that's just the rule. You don't have to do it. It just means that your child isn't in school endangering the other children. That's a choice that you get to make, but it's not political choice. It's almost a dispassionate kind of thing. Obviously, vaccines are never dispassionate, but that's how this vaccine should be treated.
Surely it comes up. The governor's office, somewhere in the executive order, most recent executive order, has said that these would be $1,000 fines. Surely somewhere in some meetings and discussions, somebody says, Mayor, $1,000 times 10 is a lot, or $1,000 times 1,000 is a lot. I mean, what does the executive order mean to you and mean to the city of Austin and the threat of fines?
It creates obviously some measure of doubt and some measure of uncertainty. But, at the end of the day, when the advice from the doctors and the data is so overwhelming that children in school should be masked. That's what you do. I mean, at the end of the day, you put the children first, and then you say everything else will fall however it falls.
Could that be fines? Do you know?
I don't know the answer to that.
ACL fests. What's the city's position, if there is a position?
Well, I'm listening to the health authority and the public health officials talk about that. I think they're concerned about really large events, of that size. It's concerned about the Pride Parade that's coming up sooner. It's this weekend. I think they're concerned about that many people that are coming from outside of the area. I think that, the safer events are smaller events. The safer events are the ones that require a vaccination in order for people to attend. They just had the Lollapalooza Festival in Chicago, big event. Everyone who entered was required to be vaccinated, show proof of vaccination or a negative test. Their numbers on their surveys indicate, I was talking to the mayor of Chicago a day or two ago, and she said that there was a material and significant number of people who got vaccinated in order to be able to go to the Lollapalooza event. Yeah. And in that age group that you were talking about just a second ago, that are otherwise hard to reach and convince that they should, take the time and spend the effort to actually get vaccinated. So that's got to be also one of the things that you take into account. How big is the event? Where is it drawing from? And what are the mitigation measures that are being taken? The goal here is not to shut down the economy. The goal here is to keep the economy open in as many different ways as we can. And frankly, having people get vaccinated in order to be able to participate in the open economy or wear masks in order to be able to participate, I think is ultimately what's going to enable us to keep the economy open and keep events open. And my hope is that more businesses participate.
So it's going to happen. It's on?
ACL?
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't heard at this point any indication that it's not going to happen.
So it sounds like you're suggesting that they do the same thing in Chicago. To come to this event, you need to be vaccinated, you need proof of vaccination. And what are you hearing back on that?
I'm not directly involved in those conversations. I know there are conversations happening between the health authority and the organizers of the event. Those particular organizers have always been real good about wanting to participate with and listen to the health authorities in our community, and I would expect that to happen here as well.
Wouldn't that announcement and decision need to be made pretty soon? I mean, wouldn't any ticket holder would want to know? I mean, you're weeks out.
Yes, and I think those conversations are happening. I think the health authority is trying to fashion rules right now with respect to large events, bigger, so that everyone's not being decided on an ad hoc basis, so that there are rules and guidelines that people can anticipate.
So how would that, the way you understand it, how is that going to square with the governor's executive order?
Well, it is always best for organizations to make these decisions on their own, to do their part to help protect the community. We can order restaurants, as they are doing in other cities in the country, that they are not allowed to admit anybody who doesn't show proof of vaccines. We can also have restaurants that are just doing that on their own. And a restaurant that's doing it on its own achieves the same purpose and isn't setting up a battle with the governor's order.
Yeah, but does it violate, whether it has teeth or not, separate that out. Does it violate what you understand the terms? If ACL says we're going to follow what they did in Chicago, you're going to have to get a ticket. You're going to have to prove that you've been vaccinated or prove a negative test or prove something. The owners, the business, does that fly in the face of the executive order as you know it?
Not as I know it. The executive order allows most businesses to be able to make decisions for their businesses. which makes sense. It's businesses can decide to put a sign on the door that says no shirt, no shoes, no service. And add masks to that.
Why won't he say that? Why do you think he won't say exactly what you just said?
I don't know the answer to that.
So from the business community, are you hearing most of them now wanting to have some sort of vax mandate? Is that the majority?
I'm hearing most businesses saying that they want to participate in a community that is doing everything it can to keep businesses open. And I think most businesses recognize that the best way for them to be able to stay open, for our economy to stay open, is for more people to get vaccinated. And while we're in that process and still wanting to be around one another, that means wearing masks. I think most businesses and most folks in the business community that I talk to understand that and want to do what's necessary to keep businesses open.
I know that it's been in the news. A few high-profile restaurants have gone there, so we can anticipate seeing more of that.
I sure hope so. And it's restaurants, across the political spectrum, if you were. The Headliners Club just, announced that vaccinations were required for people to eat there.
I haven't heard that name in a long time. Okay. So, is this, we're going to see more of this in a week, 2 weeks? And do they talk to your office and say, hey, do we have some cover on this, Mayor? What do you think? What does public health say? Or is your answer back to them, I encourage it, but you're on your own?
No, I think we're trying to do everything we can to support it and reward it and incentivize it. Again, that kind of behavior helps make the community safer. And we want to do everything we can to have as much of that as we can have.
How do you incentivize that?
Right now it's getting on the Jeff Ward show and calling out.
That's not worth a heck of a lot, but okay.
Good thing.
I think they might take a snow cone more than that, but okay, that's the incentive. Steve Adler says in the Jeff Ward show, please do it. That's it.
I think you do that as many different places as you can. You hold up people that are being really good citizens in the community. You help to elevate those voices. And ultimately, you have to take a look at what kind of actions, that at some point, you're just constantly evaluating, as you talked about earlier, the benefit of issuing orders, because now you have an order that ultimately you can't enforce unless the community really wants to do it, versus trying to get, or together with, trying to get as much information and data out so that the community knows enough and has the information to be able to make right choices.
The optics of this entire thing, I don't even know, since it's all kind of a blur, I don't even know from the beginning, but the optics of where we are now, it looks as if the governor's office in big cities don't talk, don't meet, don't get on the same page. It just seems like different planets. Has there ever been a time during this? Has there ever been an effort during this? Has there ever been a connection between big cities and the governor's office when everyone says, what do we want to do? How should we go about this? Agree, disagree? Am I characterizing this correctly, that you're really just not, big cities and the governor's office are not on the same page?
Clearly not on the same page, but not ignoring one another. I've spoken with the governor's office, and I know that my colleague, big city mayors in the country, have spoken with the governor, the governor's office. There's obviously a disconnect. The governor has made really clear, both publicly and in conversations with mayors directly, what his position is. And that's that, the people now have the information and can decide whether or not to get masked and get vaccines. He said the other day that it's inappropriate to ask someone who's been vaccinated to wear a mask. And he said people have a right not to get vaccinated. And frankly, with the science and the data we see, it's not inappropriate to ask someone who's been vaccinated to mask. The vaccination is great. It is keeping vaccinated people out of ICUs and, generally speaking, out of hospitals. It works, which is why people should take it. But
whenever that conversation took place or takes place, or if it ever takes place again, and you or some other big city mayor says, no, I disagree with that. The science doesn't back that up. But what is his answer back? Why are Why is the mayor in big cities, why are you so opposite on this?
I don't know the answer to that. When this process started a year and a half ago, the governor's office and we pledged to be guided by the data and the doctors. I believe we are still being guided by the data and the doctors. I don't believe the governor's office is at this point. The governor's not at this point. And I do not understand why, other than the elephant in the room, which is the political race that seems to be going on now between the governor of Texas and the governor of Florida.
Is he now boxed into handing out fines?
I don't know the answer to that. I mean, my hope is that the governor who has said that the virus is adapting and we need to adapt our behaviors, and I think he has said that in the context of explaining why it is that he doesn't think people should be wearing masks. I think that what he's saying is absolutely right. As this virus adapts, and it is, this is a meaner, nastier virus. And as it adapts, I agree we need to adapt as well. And hope springs eternal. And my hope is that the governor will see the numbers, see what's happening in the ICU, see what's happening in the hospitals across Texas, and really put his shoulder to helping manage this crisis.
When do you think we talk again and you say we're not really having these conversations? We're out of it and moving on. We thought we were going to be there by now, but we're obviously not. So what are you hearing from public health people? I mean, because I think some of the public is, you get this too, skeptical that, man, how do we know these variations are not going to keep coming up? So what do you hear medically about the other side of this? And when is that realistically? What is that window?
Well, I think the truth is we don't know that there won't be more variants that come up. But what we do know is how we can mitigate that risk, how we can lower the chances that a variant will develop and be able to pass. And it is clear that the more a virus spreads, the greater the opportunity for variants to be created. So we know what the tool is. We know what it is we need to do in order to minimize that risk. And the question for society, our city, our country, our world right now is what we can do to mitigate the virus as much as we possibly can, in part because it lessens the risk of variants in the future.
30% or 35% or whatever the number is that is resistant to getting the vaccine, is that number always going to be that?
I do not think so.
No?
I think that will drive down. My hope is, that soon, it's looking like pretty close, that at least one of the viruses is going to get whatever it is that is the next level of improvement from the FDA. For permanent approval or whatever that is. My hope is that some people, maybe we're waiting for that. And when that comes in, then they'll be more inclined to get vaccinated. I think as our community actually has more places where people can go if you're vaccinated, you can't go if you're not vaccinated, more people will get vaccinated in order to be able to have greater access to an open society and an open economy. Ultimately, you see, greater adoption rates for measles vaccine and polio vaccine. And my hope is we get to that place with this virus as well.
Other cities, you ever talk to other mayors that have offered incentives, cash, food, lotto tickets, cigarettes, whatever? Have you ever thought about doing it, trying it?
Yeah, I mean, again, these kinds of conversations are happening all the time. We just increased the incentive that we had to go up to $100 for taking the 2 shots. In my office last week, we had the person in the White House that is, in charge of vaccinations. And I asked him that question. I said, tell me, you're all around the country. What is it that is the incentive that seems to be working best? And what he told me was that it's kind of like a bell curve, as best as he could tell, and that about $100 seemed to be what it was that was providing the greatest incentive for the greatest number of people to participate. And
anybody that gets a vax now gets $100 from the city of Austin?
$50 per shot, $100 for 2 shots. Huh. Yes.
What's the most outrageous incentive you heard from any other mayor?
Well, it's the ones that I guess are doing what is it, $1 million lotteries.
Lottos, yeah. Would you go there? I mean, if 100 works, why not 200? It doesn't make sense. I mean, you talked about that curve. I mean, if 100 is you're saying 100 is working, then why not get this done with and say 500?
Well, that's when I asked that question,
Yeah.
and he said, you're going to get the greatest number of people for the dollars that you're spending at about 100. So you have $1 million, you have one winner. You have $100, you have tons of winners. So that's the
Okay, that doesn't quite add up, but okay. All right, Mayor, thanks for doing this. Hopefully one day we talk and this will not be the conversation.
sounds good, Jeff. You take care. Be safe.
All right.
From the Hot Pie Media Studios in Austin, Texas, it's the Jeff Ward Show. Listen at jeffwardshow.com.